1900, Volume 3. Louisa, crucified, spares Curato some chastisements. Since my adorable Jesus continued not to let himself be seen with clarity, this morning, after I received communion, the confessor placed the intention of the crucifixion. While I was amid those sufferings, almost drawn by my pains, blessed Jesus showed himself with clarity. Oh, who can say the pains that Jesus was suffering and the violent state he was in? That while he was forced to send chastisements, he did such violence to himself, for he did not want to send them. It aroused such compassion to see him in this state, that if men could see him, even if their hearts were hard as diamonds, they would break with tenderness like fragile glass. So I began to pray him to placate himself and to be content with making me suffer, sparing the people. Then I added, Lord, if you do not want to listen to my prayers, I know I deserve that. If you do not want to have compassion for the peoples, you are right, because great are our iniquities. But I ask you for pity's sake to have compassion for yourself. Have pity on the violence you do to yourself in punishing your images. Yes, I ask you for love of yourself, not to send chastisements to the point of taking bread away from your children and letting them perish. No, it is not in the nature of your heart to operate in this way. And this is the reason for the violence you feel, which would give you death if it had the power to. And he, all afflicted, told me, my daughter, it is justice that makes violence on me, and the love I have for men uses even greater violence on me, such as to put my heart into anguishes of death in punishing the creatures. And I, therefore, Lord, unload justice upon me, and your love will no longer feel violence from justice, and will not be in this contrast of chastising the people, who truly how will they go on if you act as you let me understand, withering all that serves as nourishment of man? Oh, please, I beg you, let me suffer, and spare them, if not completely, at least in part. And Jesus, as though seeing himself forced by my prayers, drew near my mouth and poured a little bit of bitterness from his, dense and disgusting, such that as soon as I swallowed it, it caused me such and so many kinds of pains that I felt I was dying. Then, blessed Jesus, sustaining me in those pains, otherwise I would have been dead, yet he had poured nothing but a little bit. What must it be for his adorable heart that contained so much of it? Heaved a sigh as if he had relieved himself of a weight, and told me, my daughter, my justice had decided to destroy everything, but now, unloading itself a little bit over you, for love of you, concedes 1/3 of what serves as nourishment of man. And I, Lord, it is too little, at least half. And he, no, my daughter, content yourself. And I, no, Lord, if you do not want to content me for everyone, at least content me for Curato, for those who belong to me. And Jesus, today there is hail which has caused great damage. You remain with the pains of the cross. Go out of yourself, and in the form of the crucified, go through the air and put to flight the demons from above Curato, since they will not be able to resist the crucified image and will go somewhere else. So I went out of myself, crucified, and I saw hail and lightnings which were about to break out over Curato. Who can say the fright of the demons, how they took to their heels at the sight of my crucified form, how they bit their fingers out of rage, and reached the point of getting angry with the confessor, who this morning had given me the obedience of suffering the crucifixion. In fact, they could not get angry with me. On the contrary, they were forced to flee from me because of the sign of redemption which they saw. Then, after putting them to flight, I went back into myself, finding myself with a good dose of sufferings. May everything be for the glory of God. End of the reading. The 6th of June, 1903, Volume 5, Jesus teaches her how she must behave in the state of abandonment and of sufferings. After going through bitter days of privations and of sufferings, this morning I found myself outside of myself with baby Jesus in my arms. As soon as I saw him, I said, "Ah, dear Jesus, how could you leave me alone? At least teach me how I must behave in this state of abandonment and of sufferings." And he, "My daughter, offer everything you suffer in your arms, in your legs, and in your heart, together with the sufferings of my members, by reciting 5 glory bees, and offer it to divine justice to satisfy for the works, the steps, and the bad desires of the hearts which creatures commit continuously. Unite it then to my sufferings caused by the thorns, and to those of my shoulders, with the recitation of 3 glory bees, and offer it for the satisfaction of the 3 powers of man, which are so disfigured that I can no longer recognize my image in them. And try to keep your will always united to me and in continuous attitude of loving me. Let your memory be the bell that rings continuously within you and reminds you of what I have done and suffered for you, and of how many graces I have given to your soul, so as to thank me and be grateful to me, since gratitude is the key that opens the divine treasures. Let your intellect think of nothing and occupy itself with nothing but God. If you do this, I will find again my image in you, and I will take the satisfaction which I cannot receive from the other creatures. And you must do this continuously, because if the offence is continuous, continuous must be the satisfaction. Then I added, "Ah, Lord, how bad I have made myself. I become even greedy." And he, "My daughter, do not fear. When a soul does everything for me, everything she takes, even refreshments themselves, I receive as if she were refreshing my suffering body. And those who give them to her, I consider as if they were giving them to me. So much so that if they did not give them, I would feel pain. But in order for you to remove any doubt, every time they give you some refreshment and you feel the necessity to take it, you will not only do it for me, but will add, 'Lord, I intend to refresh your suffering body within mine.'" While saying this, little by little he withdrew into my interior, and I could no longer see him and talk to him. I felt such pain that because of the sorrow, I would have torn myself to pieces to be able to find him again. So I began to tear the part of my interior in which he enclosed himself. And so I found him. And with higher sorrow, I said, "Ah, Lord, how can you leave me? Are you perhaps not my life, such that without you, not only the soul, but also the body is completely shattered and cannot bear the intensity of the pain of your privation? So much so that it seems to me that I'm going to die right here and now. My only and sole comfort, death." But as I was saying this, Jesus blessed me and withdrew into my interior again. He disappeared, and I found myself inside myself. End of the reading. The 6th of June, 1904, Volume 6. It takes courage, fidelity, and greatest attention to follow what the divinity operates within us. Continuing in my usual state, he made himself seen for a little from within my interior, first himself alone, and then all 3 divine persons, but they were all in profound silence. I continued my usual interior work in their presence, and it seemed that the sun would unite with me and I would do nothing but follow him. But everything was silence, and in this silence I would do nothing but identify myself with God, and my whole interior, my affections, heartbeats, desires, breaths, would become profound adorations to the Supreme Majesty. Then, after spending some time in this state, it seemed that all 3 of them were speaking, though one single voice was formed, and they said to me, "Our beloved daughter, courage, fidelity, and greatest attention in following what the divinity operates in you. Because everything you do, it is not you who does it, for you do nothing other than give the divinity your soul as residence. It happens to you as to a poor woman who had a little hovel, and the king asks for it as his residence, and she gives it to him and does everything the king wants. So since the king resides in that little hovel, it contains riches, nobility, glory, and all goods. But to whom do they belong? To the king. And if the king wants to leave, what remains for the poor one? She is left always with her poverty. End of the reading. The 6th of June, 1915, Volume 11. In the divine will, the soul must not think about herself, but only about God and her neighbour. As I was in my usual state, my always adorable Jesus, while remaining hidden, wants me all intent on him to plead continuously for my brothers. So while I was praying and crying for the salvation of the poor combatants, wanting to cling to Jesus so as to implore him that none of them be lost, I arrived at the point of saying nonsense to him. Although mute, Jesus seemed to be pleased with my petitions and willing to concede what I wanted. But a thought came into my mind that I should think about my own salvation. Jesus told me, "My daughter, as you were thinking of yourself, you produced a human sensation, and my will, fully divine, noticed it. In my will, all human actions turn into love for me and for the other. In the soul who lives in this way, there is nothing of her own, because she contains only my will, which contains all possible goods within itself. So if she contains them, why should she ask me for them? Isn't it rather fair that she take care of praying for those who do not have those goods? Ah, if you knew what calamities miserable humanity will go through, you would be more active in my will on their behalf." While he was saying this, he showed me all the evils that Masons are plotting. End of the reading. The 6th of June, 1921, Volume 13. The greatest miracle that God can perform is a soul who lives in his will. I was dissolving myself in the holy will of blessed Jesus, and I thought to myself, which one is greater, more varied and more complex, the work of creation or the redeeming work? And my always lovable Jesus told me, "My daughter, the redeeming work is greater, more varied and complex than the work of creation. Even more, it is so much greater that each act of the redeeming work is immense seas which surround the work of creation." The work of creation surrounded by the redeeming work is nothing other than little rivulets surrounded by the immense sea of the redeeming work. Now, one who lives in my will, who takes my fiat voluntas tua as her own life, flows in these immense seas of the redeeming work, diffusing and expanding herself together with them in such a way as to surpass the very work of creation. Therefore, only the life of my fiat can give true honour and glory to the work of creation, because my fiat multiplies and extends everywhere. It has no limits. On the other hand, the work of creation has its limits, nor can it become larger than it is. My daughter, the greatest miracle that my omnipotence can perform is a soul who lives in my fiat. Do you think it is trivial that my will, holy, immense, eternal, descends into one creature, and that putting my will and hers together, I dissolve her in me, becoming the life of all that the creature does, even the most tiny things? So her heartbeat, word, thought, motion, breath are those of the living God within the creature. She conceals heaven and earth within herself, although apparently one sees a creature. greater grace, a prodigy more portentous, a sanctity more heroic than my fiat, I could not give. See, the work of creation is great. The work of redemption is even greater. But my fiat, making the creature live in my will, surpasses both of them. In fact, in creation, my fiat created and delivered my works, but did not remain a centre of life in the created things. In redemption, my fiat remained a centre of life in my humanity, but did not remain a centre of life in the creatures. Rather, if their will does not adhere to mine, they render vain the fruits of my redemption. But with my fiat, making the creature live in my will, I remain a centre of life of the creature, and therefore I speak to you, as other times, that my fiat voluntas tua will be the true glory of the work of creation and the fulfilment of the abundant fruits of the work of redemption. Here is the reason why I want nothing from you, but that my fiat be your life, and that you look at nothing but my will, because I want to be the centre of your life. End of the reading. The 6th of June, 1922, Volume 14. By living in the divine will, cross and sanctity become similar to those of Jesus. I was thinking to myself, how is it that my good Jesus has changed with me? Before he would be all delighted in letting me suffer. Everything was participation of nails and cross. Now everything has vanished. He no longer delights in letting me suffer. And if sometimes I suffer, he looks at me with such indifference. He no longer shows that taste of the past. Now, while I was thinking of this, my sweet Jesus, moving in my interior, sighing, told me, my daughter, when there are superior tastes, minor tastes lose their delight, their attractiveness, and therefore one looks at them with indifference. The cross binds grace, but who nourishes it? Who makes it grow to the proper stature? My will. My will alone completes everything and allows my highest designs to be accomplished in the soul. If it wasn't for my will, even the cross, as much power and greatness as it contains, can make souls remain halfway. Oh, how many suffer! But since the continuous nourishment of my will is missing, they do not reach the destination, the undoing of the human will. And the divine will cannot give the last blow, the final stroke of divine sanctity. See, you say that nails and cross have vanished? False, my daughter, false. Before your cross was small and incomplete. Now my will, raising you into my will, makes your cross become large. And each act you do in my volition is a nail that your will receives. And as you live in my will, yours extends so much as to diffuse in each creature. And for each one of them, it gives me that life which I gave them, so as to render me the honour, the glory, and the purpose for which I created her. See, your cross extends not only for you, but for each creature. Therefore I see your cross everywhere. Before I saw it only in you. Now I see it everywhere. You're fusing yourself in my will with no personal interest, but only to give me that which all should give me, and to give all the good that my will contains to everyone, is only of the divine life, not of the human. So my will alone is that which forms this divine sanctity in the soul. On the other hand, your previous crosses were human sanctity, and that which is human, as holy as it may be, cannot do great things but small ones, and even less can it elevate the soul to the sanctity and to the fusion with the works of her Creator. She remains always in the restriction of a creature, but my will, destroying all human barriers, flings the creature into the divine immensity, and everything becomes immense in her. Cross, nail, sanctity, love, reparation, everything. My goal in you was not human sanctity, although it was necessary to first do the small things in you. This is why I delighted so much. Now, as I made you go further, and having to make you live in my volition, in seeing your littleness, your atom, embrace immensity, in order to give me love and glory for all and for each one, to render me all the rights of the whole creation, I am so delighted that all the other things give me no taste any more. Therefore your cross, your nails, will be my will, which keeping yours crucified, will complete the true crucifixion in you, not at intervals, but perennial, fully similar to mine, who was conceived crucified and died crucified. My cross was nourished by the eternal will alone, and therefore I was crucified for all and for each one. My cross marked everyone with its emblem. End of the reading. The 6th of June, 1923, Volume 15. The sign that the soul is all of God is that she has a taste for nothing but Him. I was concerned about the reason why my Jesus was not coming, and I said to myself, who knows what evil there is in my interior, that Jesus hides himself so as not to be displeased? And he, moving in my interior, told me, my daughter, the sign that there is nothing evil and that the interior of the soul is completely filled with God is that nothing is left to her which is not all mine, and that in everything that may happen inside and outside of her, she no longer has a taste for anything. Her taste is only for me and of me. And not only with profane or indifferent things, but also with holy things, pious people, services, music, etc. Everything is cold, indifferent to her, and like something that does not belong to her. And the reason is natural. If the soul is completely filled with me, she is also filled with my tastes. My taste is hers, and other tastes find no place in which to put themselves. Therefore, as beautiful as they may be, they hold no attraction for the soul. Rather, they are as though dead for her. On the other hand, the soul who is not completely mine is empty, and as things surround her, she feels as many tastes within herself. If those are things which she likes, if on the other hand they are things which she does not like, she feels disgust. So she is in a continuous alternation of tastes and disgusts. And since any taste which did not come from me is not lasting, many times tastes turn into disgusts. And this is why many variations of character can be noticed. Now too sad, now too cheerful, now all irascible, another time all affable. It is the void of me which she has in her soul that gives her so many variations of character, in nothing similar to mine, for I'm always the same, and I never change. Now, do you have any taste for what exists down here? What do you fear? That there may be some evil in you, and because of it displeased to hide myself? Wherever I am, there cannot be evils. And I, my love, I don't feel like getting a taste for anything as good as it might be. And besides, you know it better than I do. How can I get a taste for other things if the pain of your privation absorbs me, embitters me down to the marrow of my bones, makes me forget about everything, and the only thing which is present to me and driven into my heart is the nail that I'm without you and Jesus. And this tells you that you are mine and that you are filled with me, because every taste has this power. If it is my taste, it transforms the creature into me. If it is a natural taste, it sweeps her into human things. If it is a taste for passions, it casts her into the current of evil. It may seem that a taste is something trivial, yet it is not so. It is the first act of either good or evil. And take a look at how it is so. Why did Adam sin? Because he removed his gaze from the divine attraction. And as Eve presented to him the fruit to let him eat of it, he looked at the fruit. And his sight took pleasure in looking at it. His hearing took delight in hearing the words of Eve, that if he ate the fruit, he would become like God. And his palate took pleasure in eating it. So, taste was the first act of his ruin. On the other hand, had he felt displeasure in looking at it, tedium and bother in hearing the words of Eve, disgust in eating it, Adam would not have sinned. On the contrary, he would have done the first heroic act of his life by resisting and correcting Eve for having done that. And he would have remained with the everlasting crown of faithfulness toward the one to whom he owed so much and who had all the rights for his subjection. Oh, how careful must one be with the different tastes which arise in the soul. If they are purely divine tastes, one must give them life, but if they are human tastes or of passions, one must give them death. Otherwise, there is the risk of falling into the current of evil. End of the reading. The 6th of June, 1924, Volume 16. One who must live in the divine will must enclose within herself all that the divine will contains. I was in the midst of my usual and hard pains of the privation of Jesus. I feel I'm under the lash of a justice which punishes me with a great rigour, with not even a shadow of pity. Oh, punishing justice of God, how terrible you are! But you are more terrible when you hide from the one who loves you. Your arrows would be sweeter to me if, while you punish me, even tearing me to pieces, my Jesus were with me. Oh, how I cry over my destiny. Even more, I would like heaven and earth, everyone, to cry with me over the destiny of the poor exiled, who not only lives far away from her fatherland, but is also left by her Jesus, who was her only comfort, the only support of her long exile. Now, while my poor heart was swimming in the bitterness of its pain, my adorable Jesus made himself seen in my interior, in the act of dominating everything. It was as if he held many reins in his hands, and each rein was bound to a human heart. So there were as many reins in his hands for as many existing creatures. And then he said to me, my daughter, the path is long. Even more, each life of a creature is a distinct path. Therefore, it is appropriate to walk much and through many paths. You will be the one who will cover all these paths, because having to enclose my will in you, you must enclose all that it contains, and it is befitting for you to cover all the paths of every creature together with my will. Therefore, in my will, you have yet much to do and suffer. On hearing this, oppressed and tired as I was, I said, my Jesus, this is too much. Who is going to do them? I am already tired enough. And then you leave me alone. Without you, I can do nothing. Ah, if I only had you always with me, then I could do them. But alas, you leave me alone, and I can do nothing. And Jesus added, yet I am in your heart, leading everything, and all these paths were covered by me. I enclosed everything. I let not even a heartbeat or a pain of one creature escape me. And you must know that having to enclose my will in you as centre of life, it is necessary that my supreme volition find in you all the paths and all that your Jesus did, because these are inseparable from it. It is enough not to accept one single thing it contains to prevent it from forming its centre, having its full dominion, and having its point of origin in you, to make itself known and to dominate others. It will have it from itself, but not from you. See then how necessary it is that you embrace all and cover the paths of all, loading yourself with the hardship, the pains, and the acts of all, if you want the majesty of my will to descend in you and follow its course within you. On hearing this, surprised, I said, "My love, what are you saying? You know how poor I am, and in what state I find myself. And then how can I enclose all of your will? At the most, by your grace, I can live in it, but to enclose it is impossible. I am too little, and I cannot contain an unending will." And Jesus, "My daughter, it seems you do not want to understand. The one who wants to enclose this will in you must give you the grace and the capacity to contain it. Did I perhaps not enclose my whole being in the womb of my celestial mamma? Did I perhaps enclose in part, leaving part of myself in heaven? Certainly not. And by enclosing myself in her womb, was she not the first one to take part in all the acts of her Creator and in all the pains, identifying herself with me so as to admit nothing of what I worked? Was she not my starting point from which I came out to give myself to other creatures? If I did this with my inseparable mamma in order to descend toward man and fulfill my redemption, can I not do it with another creature, giving her the grace and capacity to enclose my will, making her share in all the acts it contains, in order to form its life and to come out from her, as from a second mother, to make me known and to fulfill the voluntas tua on earth as it is in heaven? Do you not want then to be the point of origin of my will? But oh, how much it cost my Queen Mother to be the point of origin of my appearance upon earth. So will the starting point of my will cost you, that it may make its appearance in the midst of creatures. One who must give everything must enclose everything. One cannot give if not what he possesses. Therefore, my daughter, do not take lightly what regards my will and what is befitting for you to do, so that it may form its life in you. It is the thing which interests me the most, and you must pay attention in order to follow my teachings. End of the reading. The 6th of June, 1926, volume 29. Jesus wants our link with everything he has done. Just as God established the epoch and the time of redemption, so it is for the kingdom of his will. The redemption is means to help man. The divine will is origin and end of man. I was doing my acts in the supreme will according to my usual way, and I tried to trace everything that my Jesus, my celestial mamma, the creation, and all creatures did. Now, while I was doing this, my sweet Jesus helped me by making present to me all of his acts, which I omitted to trace, not having the capacity to do it. And Jesus, all goodness, would make his act present to me, telling me, "My daughter, in my will, all of my acts are all present, as though lined up together. Look, here are all the acts of my childhood. There are all my tears, my wailings. There is also when, as a little child, I picked flowers while walking through the fields. Come to place your I love you on the flowers I pick, and on my hands that stretch out to pick them. It was you that I looked at in those flowers. It was you that I picked, as tiny little flower of my will. Don't you want then to keep me company with your love in all my acts as a child, amusing yourself with me in these innocent acts? Keep looking. There is when, a little child tired for crying for souls, I would have some very short sleep, but before closing my eyes, I wanted you, so that you might favour my sleep. First, I wanted to see you kiss my tears by impressing your I love you in each tear, and to have me close my eyes to sleep with the lullaby of your I love you. But do not leave me alone while I sleep. Wait until I wake up, so that just as you close my eyes, you may open my vigil in your I love you. My daughter, one for whom it was established that she would live in my will, was inseparable from me. And even though at that time you were not there, my will made you present and gave me your company, your acts, your I love you. And do you know what an I love you in my will means? That I love you encloses an eternal happiness, a divine love, and for my tender age, that was enough to make me happy and to form a sea of joy around me, enough to make me put aside all the bitternesses that the other creatures gave me. If you do not follow me in all my acts, there would be a void in your acts in my will, and I will remain isolated without your company. But I want your link with everything I have done, because since one is the will that unites us, as a consequence, one must be the act. But keep following me. Look at me here. When at my tender age of 2 or 3 years, I would withdraw from my mamma, and kneeling with my little arms stretched in the shape of a cross, I prayed to my celestial Father that he would have pity on mankind. And in my open little arms I embraced all generations. My position was excruciating, so little on my knees with my arms stretched out, crying, praying. My mamma could not have endured seeing me. Her maternal love that loved me so much would have made her succumb. Therefore come, you who do not have the love of my mamma, come to sustain my little arms, to dry my tears. Place an I love you of your own upon that ground against which my little knees were leaning, so that it might not be so hard for me. And then throw yourself into my little arms, that I may offer you to my celestial Father as daughter of my will. Even from that time I called you, and when I saw myself alone, abandoned by all, I would say to myself, if everyone leaves me, the newborn of my will never leave me. Isolation is too hard for me, therefore my acts await yours and your company. But who can say all that my sweet Jesus made present to me of all the acts of his life? If I wanted to tell them all, I'd be too long. I should fill entire volumes. Therefore I stop here. Then after this, I was saying to my lovable Jesus, my love, if you so much love that your most holy will be known and reign with its full dominion in the midst of creatures, why did you not form, together with redemption, the fulfillment of your most holy will, when you came upon earth united with your celestial mamma, who, just as she obtained the longed-for Redeemer, could also obtain the longed-for fiat? Your visible presence would have helped and facilitated the kingdom of the supreme will upon earth in an admirable way. But doing it through this poor, wretched, and incapable creature seems to me as if it would not have all the glory and the total triumph. And my sweet Jesus, moving in my interior, told me, my daughter, everything was established, the epoch and the time, both that of redemption and that of making my will known upon earth, so that it might reign. It was established that my redemption was to serve as means of help. Redemption had not been the origin of man, but it arose as means after man moved away from his origin. On the other hand, my will was the origin of man and the end in which he must enclose himself. All things have their origin from my will, and everything must return into it. And if not, everyone will do it in time. No one will be able to escape it in eternity. Therefore, also for this reason, the primacy is always of my will. Now, in order to form redemption, I needed a virgin mother, conceived without the shadow of original sin, because having to take on human flesh, it was decorous for me, eternal Word, not to take an infected blood to form my most holy humanity. Now, in order to make my will known, so that it might reign, I do not need to have a second mother according to the natural order, but rather I need a second mother according to the order of grace. In fact, in order for my will to reign, I have no need of another humanity, but to give such knowledge of it that, drawn by its prodigies, by its beauty and sanctity, and by the immense good that comes to them, creatures may submit with all love to its dominion. Therefore, in choosing you for the mission of my will, I took you from the common stock, according to the natural order. But for the decorum of my will, I had to raise you so high, according to the order of grace, that not one infected shadow might remain in your soul, because of which my will might feel reluctant to reign in you. Just as the pure blood of the Immaculate Virgin was needed to form my sanctity, to be able to redeem man, so was the purity, the candidness, the sanctity, the beauty of your soul needed to form in you the life of my will. And just as by forming my humanity in the womb of my mama, this humanity gave itself to all, it is understood, to those who want it, as means of salvation, of light, of sanctity. In the same way, this life of my will, which has been formed in you, will give itself to all, to make itself known and to acquire its dominion. Had I wanted to free you of original sin, as I did with my celestial mama, so that my will might take life in you, no one would have given a thought to letting my will reign within himself. They would have said, one needs to be a second mother of Jesus and to have her privileges, so that the life of the Supreme Will might reign in us. On the other hand, by knowing that you are from their stock, conceived just like them, if they want it, helped by their own goodwill, they too will be able to know the Supreme Will, what they must do to let it reign within them, the good that comes to them, the terrestrial and celestial happiness prepared in a distinct way for those who will let my will reign. My redemption was to serve to plant the tree of my will, which watered with my blood, cultivated and hoed with my sweats and unheard of pains, fertilized with the sacraments, first would make the tree develop, then would make the flowers bloom, and finally would make the celestial fruits of my will mature. And in order to make these precious fruits mature, the course of my 33 years was not enough, nor were the creatures prepared and disposed to receive a food so delicate, all of heaven, which I was giving. Therefore I contented myself with planting the tree, leaving all possible means to make it grow, beautiful and gigantic, and at the appropriate time, as the fruits are about to mature, so they may be picked. I chose you in a way all special, to make known to you the good it contains, and how I want to raise the creature back to her origin. Banishing her will the cause for which she descended from her happy state, she will eat of these precious fruits, which will give her such taste as to remove from her all the infection of passions and of her own will, and give back the dominion to my will. Embracing everything as though in one single embrace, my will unite everything together. Creation, redemption, and the fulfillment of the purpose for which all things were created. That is, that my will be known, loved, and done on earth as it is in heaven. And I, Jesus, my love, the more you tell me, the more I feel the weight of my littleness, and I fear that I might be an obstacle to the kingdom of your will on earth. Oh, if you and my mamma had done this directly while being on earth, your will would have had its full effect. And Jesus, interrupting my speaking, added, my daughter, our task was perfectly accomplished. Now, you be attentive on accomplishing your own. This is your task, more so since the Sovereign Queen and I are untouchable by pains. We are in the state of impassivity and of complete glory, and therefore pains can no longer have anything to do with us. You, on the contrary, have the pains as help to impetrate the supreme fiat, new knowledges, new graces, and even though I am in heaven, I will be hidden in you to form the kingdom for my will. My power is always the same. While being in heaven, I can do what I would have done while being visible on earth. When I want it and the creature lends herself, giving all of herself prey to my will, I invest her and make her do what I myself should do. Therefore, be attentive and mind your own task. End of the reading. The 6th of June, 1935, Volume 33. How one who lives in the volition of God has God himself in her power. The Queen of Heaven goes around through all the nations in order to place her children in safety. My poor mind continues its flight in the interminable light of the divine volition. There is nothing either in heaven or on earth that is not its birth, and everything and everyone have something to say about he who has generated them. Rather, they never tire of narrating his eternal origin, his unreachable sanctity, his love that always generates without ever ceasing, his fiat that always speaks. It speaks to the mind, it speaks in the heart, it speaks on the tongue, and now it speaks with articulate voices, now with moans, now with supplicating, now with empire, now with such sweetness as to move the hardest and most obstinate hearts. My God, what power your volition contains! Oh, please make it that I always live of it. But while I thought this, my sweet Jesus, making me his brief little visit with an indescribable goodness, told me, "My daughter, my will, it is everything, it does everything, it gives everything. Who can ever say that he has not received everything from it? You must know that the creature herself possesses as much sanctity, for however much she is in order, in rapport with my will, so much more does she elevate herself to union with God, for however more she is united with him. Her values, her merits are measured by the relations that she has had with my will. In fact, the whole foundation, the base, the substance, the origin of the goods in the creature depends on how many acts she has done of my will, on how much she knows about it. In fact, if she has let my volition enter in all her acts, she can say, everything is holy, everything is pure and divine in me. We can give her everything, even our life, into her power. On the other hand, if she's done nothing of my will and knows nothing, we do not have anything to give her, because she does not merit anything, since she lacks the seed to generate the good that pertains to us. So she has not one right to receive pay from her celestial Father. If she has not laboured in our field, we can say, I did not know you. Therefore, if in everything, or at least partly, she has not done anything of my will, heaven is closed for the creature, and she does not have any right to the celestial fatherland. This is the reason why we insist so much that our will be always done, that it be known, because we want to populate heaven with our beloved children. And since everything has come forth from us, we want that everything returns into our divine womb. So after this, I continued to think about the divine will, and I prayed that it would hurry, and that with its omnipotence, that can do everything, it would conquer all the obstacles and would make his kingdom come, that his will would reign on earth as it does in heaven. But while I thought this before my mind, my sweet Jesus made himself seen, so many mournful and horrifying things, before which the hardest hearts are shaken and the most obstinate knocked down. Everything was terror and fright. I remained so afflicted as to feel myself dying, and I prayed that he would spare so many scourges. And my beloved Jesus, as if he would have pity on my affliction, told me, my daughter, courage. Everything will serve for the triumph of my will. If I strike, it is because I want to heal. My love is so much that when I cannot conquer by way of love and of grace, I seek to conquer by way of terror and fright. The human weakness is so much that many times he does not care about my graces. He is deaf to my voice, he laughs at my love, but it is enough to touch his skin, to remove the things necessary to natural life, that it abases his haughtiness. He feels so humiliated that he makes himself a rag, and I do what I want with him. Especially if they do not have a perfidious and obstinate will, one chastisement is enough to see himself at the brink of the grave, that he returns to me into my arms. You must know that I always love my children, my beloved creatures. I would eviscerate myself in order to not see them stricken, so much so that in the mournful times that will come, I've placed them all into the hands of my celestial Mama. I have entrusted them to her so that she keeps them secure for me under her mantle. I will give to her all those that she will want. Death itself will not have power over those who will be in the custody of my Mama. Now, while he said this, my dear Jesus made me see with deeds that the sovereign Queen descended from heaven with an indescribable majesty and a tenderness all maternal, and she went around in the midst of creatures in all the nations, and she marked her dear children and those who must not be touched by the scourges. Each one my celestial Mama touched. The scourges had no power to touch those creatures. Sweet Jesus gave the right to his Mama of placing in safety whomever she pleased. How moving it was to see the celestial Empress going around through all the parts of the world, but she took them in her maternal hands. She entrusted them to her bosom. She hid them under her mantle, so that no evil could harm those whom her maternal goodness kept in her custody, guarded and defended. If everyone could see with how much love and tenderness the celestial Queen did this office, they would cry from consolation, and they would love she who loves them so much. End of the reading. The 6th of June, 1937, Volume 34. Interest that God has that the creature lives in his will. Dowry that he will give. Sentinel of Jesus in order to supply for what she lacks, and if necessary, he will also do miracles. Example of a king. I felt myself in the arms of the divine volition, and I thought to myself, it seems difficult to me that one can live perfectly in it. Life is full of obstacles, of sufferings, and of such circumstances one remains as absorbed, and it escapes his rapid course that as breath and heartbeat must run in that divine fiat, like its breath and heartbeat in ours that always runs in order to give us life without ever stopping. My sweet Jesus, commiserating my ignorance, all goodness told me, my blessed daughter, you must know that the first thing of most interest is that our Supreme Being wants that the creature live in our will, this having been the unique purpose for which we have given her life. Now, when we want, we give all the means, the helps, the necessary things that are needed in order to have that she would be able to give us what we want from her. And if a continuous miracle on our part is necessary, we do it, provided that we obtain our intent. You do not know what an act wanted by us and completed in the creature means. So much is its value, the glory that she gives us, that she arrives at making herself our crown. She embraces the Eternal One. And so much is the contentment that she gives us, that we place our divine being at the disposition of the creature, in order to have that our wanted and complete act would have its life in her. Now, the first dowry that we give to the one who wants to live in our divine will, the first support, the secure defence, are the truths. These open the entry, they pave the way, and jealous, place themselves as faithful sentinels around the one who wants to live in my fiat. The light of our truths that belong to it does not move any more from over the fortunate one. It invests her, it caresses her, it moulds her, it kisses her, and it gives itself sip by sip to her intelligence in order to make itself understood. And this for the cortege of the life of my volition that reigns in her. The truths, when they spring from our bosom, have their task of the good that they must do, the souls that they must enclose in the light that they possess, and therefore they are all eyes over them. They fix on them so much that they cannot escape, nor do they become tired. Although the centuries might pass, they are always at their place. See therefore what great dowry I will give to the one who must live in our eternal volition. All the knowledges that I have manifested about it, the immense values, its worth, its love, and the love that has pushed me to manifesting them. will be the great dowry, the divine dowry that I will give to who will want to live in my fiat, in which they will find all the superabundant helps in order to render themselves rich and happy. They will find in these truths the tender mother who, taking them onto her lap as little babies, wraps them with light, feeds them food, and lets them sleep on her bosom. In order to keep them secure, she walks in their steps, works in their hands, speaks in their voice, loves and palpitates in their hearts. And in order to keep them attentive and entertained, she acts as teacher to them, telling them the enchanting scenes of the celestial fatherland. In these truths they will find the one who cries and suffers together with them, the one who knows how to put in traffic even their breath. The littlest things, the trifles themselves, will change for them into divine conquests and eternal values. And I, my Jesus, you are right, but human weakness is so much that I fear that I would make little escapes from within your will. And Jesus, resuming his speaking, added, My daughter, your fears displease me. You must know that so much is my interest, the love that burns me, because I want that the soul lives in my will, that I take the commitment of everything. I supply for her in everything. However, I do this when there has been a firm and constant decision of wanting to live in it, and she does not lack on her part. She does however much she can. Listen to a secret of mine, my daughter, and where my love makes me reach. Listen to what I do, for strict necessity of the human life, this life that is also mine, because of sufferings that I myself dispose. So the creature remains as stupefied and lost. Therefore she does not know how to follow the acts of the life that reign in her. I, because I want that this life does not remain interrupted, because it being life, not virtue that can do acts at intervals and circumstances, but life, there is all the necessity of the continuous act. I am who am on watch and jealous. I maintain the sentinel over her. As I see that she interrupts her course, I do what she should do, such that my operating in my fiat shakes her and she returns into herself, and she follows her course in my volition. And I, without even saying anything to her about her stop, I retie from where she left off and where my act followed, in a way that the life of my fiat remains never interrupted in her, because I have supplied for everything. More so because in her will she wanted to, but weakness interrupted her. This is why my love is so much that I want that she lives in my will, that at whatever cost, even if continuous miracles would be needed, I will do them. But have you noticed my tenderness, my strong love, that having failed to keep her course, I do not reproach her? I do not say anything to her, and if I see that she notices that she has failed, I make her courageous. I commiserate her in order to not place mistrust in her. And all goodness I say to her, do not fear. I have supplied for you, and you will be more attentive, is it not true? And she, at seeing my goodness, loves me even more. I know that I must give of mine in order to have that the creature lives in my will, and therefore I will act like a king who greatly loves that his kingdom be populated. He makes it known by the whole world that whoever wants to can come into his kingdom. He wants it known in order to send them money for the trip, and that he will let them find a residence at their disposition, abundant clothes and foods. The king ventures to give them such riches as to render them rich and happy. So much will be the goodness of this king that he will live together with the people whom he loves so much, that with his riches he has ransomed them from the miseries and unhappiness of life. Such am I. I will make known to the entire world that I want the people of my divine volition, and provided they give me their name and will let me know that they want to come into my kingdom, I will give them all the goods. Unhappiness will have no place in him. Each one will possess its kingdom. He will be king of himself. They will live together with their Creator. I will display so much in giving that every one will remain enraptured by it. My daughter, oh, how I long for this living of the creature in my will, and you pray and long for it together with me, and it will be sweet for you to place your life for a kingdom so holy. End of the reading. There are no more readings today.